Welcome to Bill and Rob's, an excellent adventure. I'm Bill Tilley.
And I'm Rob Schulte. And Bill, today we have a guest. The man who taught me how to create an analog mix minus via an online video in 2017, greatest generation music mastermind, and YouTube cooking sensation Adam Ragusea. Adam, welcome to the show.
That's the weirdest fucking resume I've ever heard in my life.
But you remember random mix minus video you did from almost a decade ago,
I did.
right?
That was like ninja MacGyver style mix minus.
Yes.
Right?
And some of us needed Ninja MacGyver style mix minus at that point in time when we were struggling in Brooklyn.
It was crazy. Like it was this era of for people who don't know, this is just like, it was an obscure fucking podcast technology thing that is the easiest thing in the world to negotiate in the year 2023. But in 2015 or whatever the fuck that was, it was like really hard.
Yes.
Without like a big ass soundboard and, you know, a union guy behind it.
Yeah.
And it was this crazy thing where it's like the technology for us to bypass that entire studio and everything it stands for was there. Like we had the laptops and the flash audio recorders and the voice over IP and all this shit. And like, but it was just taking it that last mile and making the shit talk to each other and handshake and not have just like, you know, weird dropouts. And oh my God, it was such a frustrating time. A frustrating time.
And I love that we have survived the mix minus wars and are Zencastering to this day. Bill, sorry, a little pod talk there for a moment from behind the scenes. Hope you are still with us.
That's fine with me. I'm just glad all this panned out because that allowed me to go down the pod roulette wheel with the goose when I was big into the Billy Joel Gordon Sumner phase of historical podcasting he was into back in the day. So
yes, for the people who don't know, I, with my dear friend Meg Donahue, made a show where we listened to every Billy Joel album and made fun of them. And then we embarked on the same with the Sting and the Police. And we got as far as like when his solo album started to get real shitty. And then I had my second baby, and then we were just like, nah, well, just leave it there.
Yeah. To that point, I feel like the title of the movie we're watching is in the description, but I think this is like finally making good on a podcast idea you had back in the day about swords and movies involving swords.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, damn it. Yeah, because I moved away, and so Meg and I don't live in the same city anymore. But yeah, we should revive that. We wanted to do a show about like movies about swords, and we were going to call it License to Crenellate.
Yes, that was it.
Which for people who don't know is a real thing. Like crenellations are like the notches at the top of the castle that you can kind of hide behind, and then like duck out of it and shoot your arrow and then duck behind it again. And there was periods in history where in order to crenellate your home, thereby fortifying it, thereby making it defensible, thereby turning it into a power center that could potentially rival royal authority, you would have to get a license to crenellate from the king. License to crenellate. That's a fucking great. Your people have got to be good people. They're not going to steal my idea.
No. Plus, it's now copyrighted, everyone. We have put it here. It's a virtual trademark and patent.
Right, exactly, yes.
So,
yeah, don't go to Home Depot and think this is some weird thing. Like if you go to Arby's and order some weird thing off the menu at 2 a.m, you'll get an 8-foot tall roast beef sandwich. If you just go, okay, hey, crenellate, aisle 2, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Not at all.
Now, when you're going to crenellate your home.
You gotta want to make sure use a sufficient sized rock, hewed out of absolutely granite, and then carried up by a bunch of slaves and put together by gravity, not mortar, because we don't have that technology at this time.
Now, you guys may not know, but I had to sign a document saying I would not do the This Old House voice after leaving Greatest Gen for 15 years.
That's the kind of thing those motherfuckers would do.
I know. And
that's
they
the kind of thing they would do.
They also like make these like weird music choices for their podcasts where I don't use all of the songs.
Best part of the thing that I wrote,
and then
just because
blame
it was
on
at the
me.
end and nobody bothered to listen all the way to the end.
I know.
You're now into the actual war part, everybody. This is the war podcast we came here for.
I mean, they make these weird choices, blame it on me, and then start an internet beef that has to be squashed on Bill and Rob's an Excellent
I just want to point out that what you're referencing is that in a greatest trek, are most of your listeners FODs?
I would say yes.
Sure.
Okay. So in a recent Greatest Trek, the boys and I were talking, and we were talking about the old Greatest Trek theme that I wrote for the Greatest Discovery era, and how my favorite part of it was a part toward the end that for whomever was editing the episodes at any given time, who could say? Who knows? Never seemed to dip into that part of the song, and that always frustrated me. But I sort of said that as a joke.
And it totally makes sense. And I'll tell you this, I was perturbed for about a minute and a half, and then I realized it's all good. I don't even remember why I didn't use that part of the song. And then it became a template, and then way more Star Trek shows started coming out, and I could not turn back.
Yeah.
I had to continue my Adobe Audition template. And because I don't know if you know this, when you change anything about a format style with a podcast with a huge audience, you will hear about it.
Oh, yeah.
You will hear about it. I'm not sure if that goes for YouTube. Everyone seems to be pretty nice on YouTube. So
what the fuck are you talking about?
Guys, should we get into today's episode?
I don't know what kind of shop you run around here.
Bill, then I'm asking you. Are you ready?
I am ready to charge across this field filled with proverbial pikes and drummers and muskets and get into this movie. Let's talk about some Cromwell from 1970. Rob, how do we inform our audience what this movie's about?
Well, I found the laser disc, and I feel like in the tradition of reading the back of the VHS box, which I also have, we all know this, I will read what it has to say and hopefully give the audience an idea. And then we'll go through our patented segments to talk about aspects of this film that really jumped out to us. So here's the back of the sleeve. 17th century Britain is a hotbed of revolution, treachery, and court intrigue. And standing in the center of the tumultuous storm is Cromwell. Richard Harris stars in this dazzling historical epic as Oliver Cromwell, the fiery, ambitious commoner who took on the monarchy and almost single-handedly changed the course of Western civilization. Alec Guinness lends his formidable presence as the enigmatic and forceful King Charles I. The clashes of these two great figures are fought in castle corridors, on the floor of Parliament, and finally in a rousing battle between their two armies. One man will become absolute ruler, the other will be executed. Featuring strong performances and gripping battle sequences, Cromwell's England comes alive in this historic tale of power and passion. Rated G.
That's rated G?
It is rated G.
That's surprising.
There's some battlefield gore in this.
Yeah. And I guess it's just that weird Temple of Doom, 1970s, like, well, it's historical, so the kids are learning. G.
Was Temple of Doom like a watershed moment for that? Were we all of us who were traumatized by seeing a hand tear out a heart?
Yeah.
Yep.
Bill, what is it? Do you know probably the factual evidence of this better than I?
Well, they wanted Indiana Jones to be watched by kids, but it was fairly gory. So it didn't count for PG. They certainly want to give it an R. So that's where you start getting the middle ground of PG-13. Mm-hmm. And it meant nothing really at the end of the day, because every kid that wanted to see a movie back in the 80s would goddamn go see that movie one way or the other, because you just walked in and you went to the other door. That's how that worked. So
I thought PG-13 was just like PG Cool Dad.
PG-13,
if you had a cool dad, you could see that movie. But
PG-13 meant you would get a shit instead of a damn, and you might get side boob.
Or a butt.
Might get a butt.
Possibly.
Yes.
Possibly.
Could get a butt. So many butts in Temple
Cromwell.
of Doom and Cromwell, really. So, Bill, why don't you walk us through what we do first on it? Well, you know what? Actually, before we get into the patented segments, I think Adam Ragusea, we need to know why. Why did you choose this film for us to watch today?
Yeah. So how did I get obsessed with a legendarily hated film, which is the 1970 Cromwell biopic starring Richard Harris and Alec Guinness? A movie that is pretty much exclusively, it really exists to be shown in European history class in high school in the 1980s or 90s, maybe. That's really its only function, is to be shown in European history class.
So the teacher can grade tests and such.
Yeah. Coach has finals next week, so
exactly.
No lessons today.
Yeah. Civics class, maybe. Did either of you have to watch this in school?
Didn't have to watch this. I did have to watch 1776, the musical.
Yeah, so this is this is the British 1776, really. It's just I mean, the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, as they're called now. Back then, they would have called it the English Civil War because it would have been Anglo-centric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just say the execution of Charles I is easily the most important event in early modern English history. It's fully equivalent to the Revolutionary War or whatever. And it's kind of I feel like this movie is done so badly in so many ways that I feel like an American kid watching this in civics class, at fucking, Hooverville High School in 1992 on the fucking media cart,
They roll it in. It's movie day.
I feel like that kid watching this film would be like, why did they make a movie about these events?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about this seems interesting. But it's to ask that question would be to say why make a movie about the signing of the Declaration of Independence? Because it's the foundational myth of the modern British nation.
Mm-hmm.
And myth is a word I choose intentionally. This is a mytho-historical account.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so why am I obsessed with it? Well, I'm just kind of obsessed with historical combat films. Sure. Because I'm a man, and I, like all male identifying persons, you get the first whiff of the autumn of your life. And if you weren't already interested in military history, you become interested in military history.
Yep.
It's something from deep inside your Jungian, collective memory or whatever.
I'm currently listening to an audiobook on the history of the war in Vietnam.
Oh, so Jesus. It happens to all of us. Welcome to the Brotherhood.
Yeah,
I must have been an old man a long time ago because I liked Patton when I was a teenager.
Some people get started early. The cool ones get started early, but some of us it takes but it gets all of us. So anyway, so I just watched all the sortie movies basically that I could get on Netflix. And so years ago, I was just like, oh, Oliver Cromwell. Oh, is that Richard Harris? Holy shit! The man who brought you such hits as MacArthur Park is melting in the dark.
The man who showed up on the Dick Cavett show with a giant bruise on his face from being in a bar fight on the way to the show.
I know. Was it with Peter O'Toole or something like that?
Not with O'Toole that night. He got that one on his own.
So I was like, whoa, actually, Alec Guinness playing Charles the First?
Mm-hmm.
Like, whoa, because that's perfect because he looks like Charles the First. So I was like, okay, I'm down. I'm down like a clown, Charlie Brown. And I started watching this movie, and you're just hit with its bad school playedness. It's very school play. The writing,
yes.
Very nakedly expository. Must tell you about the political context in which this story takes place. Yes. Parliament is not set for these past 12 years, and and I would oppose any move to do so. It's all this
ending
very
with a voiceover for that, you know.
God,
just so you know, this is what else we think. We couldn't fit into the dialogue.
Fuck, man, it's so didactic, in a way that is so obnoxious, and at the same time, a lot of it's just kind of basic movie making. Some of it is great and some of it is terrible. Like it's all over the place. It's not in control of its tone.
No,
it doesn't really know what it wants to say about Cromwell. And it contains numerous enormous historical inaccuracies, one of which I think we should wait to talk about to the end.
Okay.
So there's one historical inaccuracy that is not only enormous, it's like actually meaningful. It's not a quibble. It's not an IMDb goof. It's like this inaccuracy is people run around talking about harm way too loosely these days. This is actually like a harmful inaccuracy. But it takes place at the end of the story, and I think we should just kind of save that to the end, because I'm really going to spend most of this conversation defending this film, because for whatever fucking reason, I just kept watching it. And each time I watch it, I like it more and more and more. And I keep realizing that so many of the things that I thought were bad were actually like, oh my God, that's actually like the most genius solution to the problem of trying to condense this history or something like that. Like I keep seeing more and more correct decisions, and I keep seeing more and more obvious holes in the criticisms of the movie. Like, so the biggest, well, other than the inaccuracy that shall not be named yet, the second biggest inaccuracy in the film is that it massively inflates the role of Oliver Cromwell in the events of the English Civil War. And indeed the entire Wars of the Three Kingdoms. What we see in this movie is a period of history of about 20 years. And at the beginning of it, Oliver Cromwell is nobody. He's a member of Parliament in the House of Commons, but he is like the definition of a backbencher. He is very, very minor country gentry. His term in Parliament has been completely undistinguished, right? What happened was that he just sort of turned out to be, by luck of the draw, like an instinctively great military commander, or specifically a great cavalry officer. And just over the course of these events, he kind of climbed the ladder of the army, right? Such that, and other guys also fell away. So it's not like he was the prime mover of these events. It's more that like there was a bunch of guys who did these things, and he was the one who was left standing at the end, and therefore got to be military dictator for life, is basically how it ends.
So very much a right place, right time situation.
But also right guy. Like he, I think historians are pretty in agreement that he was an extraordinary person. Perhaps not necessarily as great a military commander as kind of an earlier generation of historians would have said. More recent historians assess it kind of, a lot of it was luck, and a lot of it may have been sort of self-manifesting luck. Like basically Cromwell's, everyone thinks from Cromwell's writings, because he was an obsessive diarist and everything, we can really get inside his head. Cromwell's religious belief, and his belief that he had been sent by God to destroy the monarchy, and really for the purposes of defending Protestantism and destroying Catholicism. He believed that he really believed that he had been sent to do this. He believed that God was fully on his side and would not let him fail. And as a result, he just charged into situations that he shouldn't have charged into. And as a result, he won, because the enemy was like, oh, fuck, seriously? We
got some hubris working for him on this.
Right, exactly.
For sure.
And also the other thing is that, like, of the generals, because there were many incredibly talented generals on the parliamentarian side. But unlike, say, Fairfax, who in the movie is the guy with the mustache and the long curls. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, here, there's an example, right? So like the movie shows Cromwell having personally envisioned and raised the new model the New Model Army himself, of which he is the general, and then Fairfax is shown to be the cavalry commander working underneath Cromwell, and that's in fact the exact opposite. Fairfax was the general of the New Model Army, and Cromwell was the cavalry commander underneath him and second in command. And they were both like brilliant soldiers in their own way. But the thing about Cromwell was that his politics were right. The army had gotten incredibly radical, like far more lefty radical than anything that exists in our country or countries. Are you, any of you guys in Canada? I forget.
No, but I was just there visiting.
Okay.
So.
Like there's, I mean, like really, really radical, like leveler shit. People saying that like we're going to get rid of all earthly lordship, all lordship in the church. There is going to be one archbishop. There's going to be one king. Other than that, all men are equal. Like that kind of really, and we're going to, and we have to make sure that we use military force to impose our form of Protestant worship on everybody else, right? So the army had become this hotbed of radicalism, and Oliver Cromwell's politics are right. He maybe wasn't as extreme as the men, but he was way more extreme than any of the other, aristocratic generals.
Yeah, they were going to listen to him.
Yeah. So basically he had the support of the army, and he believed in what he was doing, whereas the rest of the guys were getting kind of disillusioned. Fairfax became, and it shows us in the movie, him getting disillusioned at the trial. Yeah. It's just in point of fact, he never attended the trial at all. He refused to attend. But anyway, so all of that is like the biggest second biggest inaccuracy of the film is that it makes Cromwell seem way more important than he actually was. He really only becomes that important at the very end of the story. Okay. So, but what you could say is like, well, how else are you going to tell this story? You need to turn Cromwell into a composite character. There's way too many fucking people in this massive, sprawling epic that takes place 3 wars over 3 kingdoms over 20 years, and all of these incredibly fascinating dudes. And there's different phases to it. And it's just like, no, you can't fucking do it. It's a movie. Yeah. So you make it one guy. And if you're going to make it one guy, Cromwell's the guy you make it.
So a little bit different than the Mel Gibson take of making a fake person for the Patriot.
Oh, God. Wow. Have you guys talked about the Patriot on your program yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Because that is a truly irredeemably awful film.
So bad.
That is like, I hate it because it's like, in terms of technical craft, it's one of the best Hollywood films ever made.
Yes.
Like the cinematography in that is like, don't go to film school, just watch that movie. Like it's so fucking good. The craft of it is so good. And to have all of that fucking beauty and artisanship spoiled and besmirched and spooged over by fucking Mel fucking Gibson's revanchist fucking.
It is rough. It is.
That's
rough.
Always the tightrope of the movie, is that when in one direction, if you hate it so much, but then if it has some artistic mastery in the other direction, whichever direction that is, it's the most maddening movie ever, because you can't fully hate it and you can't fully endorse it. You're just sitting right there on that fence while you're watching it going, make a mistake, movie. Do something wrong. Please do something wrong that's just going to give me that 51% where I can go to sleep tonight.
Don't let me like you. Come on.
This movie is one of those movies.
Oh, that's what happened to you?
Yeah, it
is. Well, what got you? What did you like?
Well, I like the old school filmmaking.
Perfect. Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
No, I liked, because this is a movie from the 70s. I'm always amazed by the scope of what you can pull off, because you have to be able to do things. Raise
did you want to talk about the opening scene, the opening sequence?
It's one of my points in there, so it's actually one of my fun
Let's start at the beginning, yeah.
Well, and I think that, like, honestly, we do like to start with fun facts, and I think you just schooled us in these fun facts. So I think we can jump to likes and come back to any other points that we want to bring up. Bill, how do you feel about that?
Actually, I want to do one because I want to dovetail off what Adam just said about the opening. This isn't so much a fun fact, but this is part of what hit me with this movie is, for some reason, I'm watching this thing and it's a really dynamic views of the countryside and some lone riders.
The Fens.
And for some reason,
England at dusk. No, not dusk. What's the morning fucking
Dawn?
Dawn?
It's not dawn.
Dawn.
It's right around dawn.
Like a misty, dewy dawn
Yeah.
over the fens of Cambridgeshire. It's
And-
fucking gorgeous.
And for the dumbest reason I feel in my own head, I'm looking at this, I'm going, why do I have Planet of the Apes vibes
I think I know why.
watching this?
I think I know why.
Something about the positioning of the cameras, the shots as they were framed, the two riders on horseback looking down. The music even struck a chord. There was a vibe in there.
Did you
that I'm
guys
like-
notice the score in this film?
Yeah,
The score in
Yeah.
this film is fantastic.
Yes.
it's amazing.
I need to find this gentleman's name because Frank Cordell
Yeah.
fucking killed this gig.
Yeah.
All of that rejoice in the Lord motive
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
so, it feels, I mean, it's exactly how that music kind of sounded at the time. Like it was just, it was so perfect, pitch perfect. And
I'm immediately watching this looking like, what's going to happen next? And I thought it was just some kind of weird coincidence because at that point, that's when Richard Harris spins around and eyes to camera and it's like, Cromwell.
fierce.
And it's, oh my God, it's Blue Steel looking me right in the face.
I
What is this?
know.
What did this
Ollie
movie just
Fierce,
do?
that's his nickname.
Yeah. And I'm going, that's weird. And then I found
With his fucking mullet and his mullet swishing in the breeze behind him.
oh, and the words off to the side, like just dead to camera. You just, everything but a whip crack was right where it needed to be. And I found out that Charlton Heston apparently was in the running for this movie to play Cromwell. But
Do we know why that didn't happen? Did he
just didn't seem, I guess he just wasn't interested in it. He didn't think an American
not American
particularly
enough?
should
Yeah.
be should be playing the part, which I often I understand a lot of where that's coming from.
But that's
especially
absurd
back in the
because
day.
this is
But you're
what
an
we're
actor.
looking when United Statesians look at this film, we're not looking at English history, we're looking
No.
at United States history. This is because these are events that directly led to the American Revolution. This is the same people who did that. Well, it's the next generation, as the generation previous, basically.
This is our Phantom Menace, people.
Yeah.
That's what Cromwell
exactly.
is.
There you go. This is the fucking prequel of the musical 1776 with the guy who did Kit in Knight Rider.
William Daniels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
all that
justice for the
together-
prequels. I'm just going to put that out there.
So all that vibe together had me on board to see what was next, and it just kind of gave me the side thought of, I wonder, is the lawgiver related to Cromwell somewhere down the line? Because the ape's future is all our futures.
Mm. I think
That's
so true.
inarguable. But I think one of the reasons why that sequence reminded you of Planet of the Apes is the film grain. Did you
Mm.
check how grainy the
It looks
footage
like-
is in this
it looks-
opening sequence?
Yeah, it looks like they drug it across the parking lot on the way to the developer. It is.
I know, or like they sent
harsh.
it to like the bad lab, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
know,
it's
like
like
they
when you
got
get that
desperate and they
print.
sent it to the lab with the guy with the little problem, and
Uh-huh.
and I don't know, but it's just like I was like, wow, they could, that was good enough back then, huh?
I wonder.
And it's that also it's shooting with super long lenses to get stuff really far away, but those lenses they wouldn't resolve that far out, and so everything was like foggy, and it made me realize that because I grew up on a lot of media shot in that age when long lenses couldn't really focus, that to me something being out of focus means it's far away.
Yeah.
And I wonder if more of younger viewers have that in their heads.
well, I
That
wonder,
is interesting. I
Is
have never
that-
thought about that.
is that what caused the blue halo around the two riders? Because I'm going, this isn't CG. There's no such thing. They shot this outside.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's an example of that in Star Trek. Star Trek: The Next Generation. The first time we see Gowron, when he's in the background, and the boys, when they first watched that episode on the podcast, remarked on how that shot was out of focus and how it seemed like it was a mistake. And I was thinking, no, it communicates that he's far back in the room. He's like in the background, not yet to the fore. He's one of the contenders who's
Right.
there in the background for the throne.
Yeah.
But,
Whoa.
it's all connected. It's all fucking connected, boys.
So connected. The one
feel
thing
so
I'll just
connected.
say about a fun fact, guys, that I'm gonna say a couple, but they're real quick. We don't see anything in Northern Ireland because of the Troubles, and so everything was cut. from Ireland in this
Yeah,
movie.
so
Like
this
they
is-
shot scenes.
This is the inexcusable historical.
Well, then we
inaccuracy.
can wait. We can bring this up later.
Yeah,
Why don't we
leave
just
that
bring
for
this
the
up
end.
later?
Let's do it now.
Okay.
You brought it up. So this movie shows Oliver Cromwell. There's a civil war between Parliament and the King over who gets to actually be in charge, and Parliament eventually wins and kills the King because he basically shows that he will never give up the fight and will not stop making alliances with Catholic powers, among others, to try to get his throne back. And so they have to kill him. So they kill him. They declare a republic, a secular, well, no, the exact opposite, a religious theocratic republic, a puritanical republic, ruled over by the House of Commons in particular. And then the movie shows Cromwell sort of doing all of this and then going back to Cambridge because he's lost his son in the war, who, by the way, didn't die in battle. He died in disease in the camp, like most men.
Mhm.
Anyways, so he's shown just kind of sitting by his fire, which, by the way, did you guys clock that fireplace in his like manor house?
Gigantic.
Oh, how badly do you want that fucking fireplace?
I recently was able to purchase a home, and I was just thinking I made a mistake. I didn't get
You didn't get one of those?
fireplace in my home
With the giant like meat hooks on it?
Yes.
Oh, God, I want that.
I could be making,
Yeah, this is the fireplace that so much 70s porn could be shot in front of. You could shoot 2 movies at a time in front of this fireplace and never have any bleed over on set.
That's true, exactly.
amazing.
And indeed, they probably, in order to shoot this in this set in 1969, they probably had to remove the shag carpet that was already there.
Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, and I'm sure that was very uncomfortable in their Puritan attire because that real fire is burning hot, son.
Sure is, exactly. Well, but
man.
did you notice that everyone just looks wet all the time?
Yeah.
Thick with makeup.
What is up with the movie makeup?
Well, I did read something about this. They had said that like
They put a mole on Cromwell because Cromwell, we
Yes.
know from his death mask, had a big nasty mole. Yeah.
and they had they tried to make the actors look more like the characters by doing like not just movie makeup that matched portraits that
Fucking
were painted
loaf.
of
They
these
put
men.
loaf
Yes.
on the guys.
So
Thick
it's acrylic paint.
Everybody
Yes.
just looks like pasty. But also, don't you remember it used to be that you had to have makeup to be on TV? Don't you remember
yeah.
that?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Like my
You-
dad was on this local game show in State College, Pennsylvania called the Pennsylvania Game a bunch. So I got to like go to like go see dad do a TV show, a local TV show.
Oh yeah.
And they always had to like powder you. Like, what happened to that? No one does TV makeup anymore. I fucking work on TV on the internet and I've never used makeup in my life.
It must be filters, man. It must
Well,
be.
Was it
And
that they
on-
needed to make faces more reflective because the film was less sensitive?
I don't know.
Well, I
To
think
bri-
it's
to
'cause
brighten the face.
that, and they had to light them up so hard because the lights were so different back then that you've got
Yeah.
to tone the actors back down, or everybody looks, because they're always shiny. That's what they always say. They're just super shiny.
Yeah,
So-
especially shot fucking. This has got to be one of the last great what's the color?
Oh,
Panavision. No.
they say it right at the beginning with
col-
those shaky title cards.
Yes, color by.
Technicolor?
Technicolor, yes, the 3-color
Technicolor,
process where there's
yeah.
there's 3 strands of film shot
Yeah.
in sequence. It was incredibly expensive and labor
Mhm.
intensive. This is got to be one of the last of those like great Technicolor productions. And for me, it's funny because it's like, to me, it looks bad. Like that makes it look old. Whereas like you see some, the Deer Hunter a few years later, shot on basically a Super 8 camera, really desaturated kind of flat look. And to me, I'm programmed to think that looks better. Whereas I look at a movie like this and these glorious fucking intensely saturated colors. And to me, it just looks cheesy and old.
Yeah.
And again, makes it feels very like didactic and something that I would get on the media cart.
Mhm.
that will
Pan and
that
scan.
will play into my dislikes later when we reach that point. So,
Hmm.
but in honor of everybody, I just want you all to know I am wearing makeup for tonight's broadcast.
Oh,
So,
well.
I'm old school in it. I
Mm.
got some of the red out.
We really, really appreciate your hard work and dedication to the pod, Bill.
I know. That's
Quality
as far as I'm
Tilly
going.
loaf.
Yeah.
And those watching this on
Did I get a
our
ding? Do you guys do dings? Quality Tilly
did.
loaf. That'd be a good one.
Quality Tilly loaf is going to be the ding of this episode. Like I said, there are certain legal things that I have signed a contract for.
Indeed, yes.
But the ding was not on the 35-page contract, so we will be dinging this episode. That is for sure.
You reserved dinging rights.
Rob
yes.
actually is wearing a collar that goes off when he does one of these things that reports directly to Adam and Ben.
And everyone knows this. They know this because whenever they've watched the videos of these episodes, they see the giant collar. It's much like the Savage Land collars the X-Men had to wear on the animated series.
Except the collar's not around his neck. If you want to guess where it is, viewers, get on social media and let us know.
It's why we had to go Patreon, but not this episode. It's out for the public. So let's do this, guys. Let's each go around the table and say a couple things we liked. I know that we've already mentioned a few things we liked, but we can go likes, and then we might have to find a couple of things we disliked about the movie that we can just highlight for our listeners. I will start because I think it goes along this like film grainy sort of discussion that we've had, and that is that I love say what you will about the Technicolor and the scratchiness and the shaky title cards and the blue halos and all of this. I love a good period piece that's not CGI'd to hell.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can
put
up with
it's so
that.
kind of a last of its kind is how it feels, right?
Yes.
Last of its breed.
You turn on one of those weird Viking movies that's on Netflix these days, and you're just kind of like, why is there the same fire After Effects thing happening everywhere in this movie? Or it's just glossy and weird. Last of its kind is the perfect way to put this. And I think the other thing I'll say that I liked about this, there's a few things, but I'll keep it short. The motivation to tell this story, right? Like, they got a lot of stuff wrong, like you've told us, Adam. They got aspects correct, but someone was there going like, you know what? We got to tell this story, and this is how we're going to do it because it is an important part of our history. And who cares that there may be just blatant lies in the story? The story must be told.
All right, so I think we need to talk about it.
Okay.
So, here's the thing, which is that it's like there's one universe in which the reason Oliver Cromwell is important in Western civilization is that he was granted probably the most important figure in the English civil wars, or the most important parliamentarian. I mean, I think probably Charles the First was the most important figure. But anyway, he died. So Cromwell, you could say, was the most important figure in this war. And the most important lasting effect of that war was to establish parliamentary sovereignty. And that specifically that the House of Commons is the source of sovereignty in what became the United Kingdom. And that wasn't actually even necessarily what they were fighting for. Some of them were kind of fighting for that, but most of them actually not. But that ended up being the de facto result of these events, is that for the first time, an elected body representing the common people was thought to be the source of political legitimacy, right? That was a very, very new concept. Yeah. I mean, new concept within its context, its geographic and cultural context, right? And in that sense, you are looking at the prelude of the American Revolution. You're looking at the prelude of all the independence movements of all of the colonies of the world. I mean, these are incredibly important events. And Cromwell, his legacy in that vein is mixed to good, right? I think most people would assess it thusly, right?
Yeah.
So there's one universe in which Cromwell is remembered chiefly for those events. The other universe is what he's in another universe. He's remembered for what he did after what we see in this movie. He's sitting in that fireplace after the war. He just wants peace and to sit by his fire and be at ease with his conscience until, just when he thought he was out, they pull me back in.
There it is.
And they ask him to be king, and he denies it, which did actually happen. That's true, but it did not happen like the way it's shown. What he really did, he didn't go up to live a life of peace in his Cambridgeshire manor house. He went to he invaded Scotland, and then he invaded Ireland. And this is really dangerous territory, but from what I can tell, the consensus among professional historians nowadays is that the Irish memory of Oliver Cromwell is a little bit overstated. He did not quite do the massacres that he is remembered as having done in Ireland. The particular massacres, the first one at when he stormed a castle called Drogheda, I think it's pronounced. And yes, they were storming a castle. It was a siege. And when the defenders refused to capitulate, so as was generally the case in those days, well, if you end up having to take the castle by force, you slaughter the garrison. Those were kind of the rules of war at the time. If the garrison surrenders, then they are spared. Right? Those were the sort of rules. But anyways, so that's the argument. I'm not making that argument. I'm saying that argument exists in defense of Oliver Cromwell's conduct in Ireland. Yeah. I'm not the one making it, but people do make it. Anyways, the point is that it's like, yes, regardless of what Oliver Cromwell specifically himself personally did or did not do, the effect of the Cromwellian conquest of Ireland was that Ireland's population was reduced as much as by half, some estimates think, due to famine and out-migration, forced migration, being sent as indentured servants to America. And that's where we get the Scots-Irish of Appalachia, where I live now. All of these things. So anyway, yes, anyone having anything to do with Ireland and those peoples of the world whose sympathies would be with Ireland rather than with England, and that's a lot of peoples of this world, if they remember Oliver Cromwell at all, they remember him as this genocidal maniac, which he arguably was. But he was also this other guy who did this thing that the effect of it was a very important step on the path toward liberal democracy, even though he was not a liberal Democrat. And there's this ridiculous scene where they're having a meeting with Charles, and he says, "I believe we need to move to a more enlightened form of government. Such an institution is called democracy, sir." And like, Cromwell was not a fucking Democrat. Like, he did not want the people in charge. No. He wanted gentlemen in charge, very much so.
He says in the movie, there must be a king.
I know. And also, this in a much smaller scene, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it's right before they're going to go into battle for the first time. And Cromwell says to his son, Richard, a little aristocratic shithead with a fucking, Prince Charming blonde floppy hair. And he says, like, where is your sword, Richard? "I have no sword, father." "Well, you must get one and wear it. It is a mark of your rank, captain." Why the fuck does this kid get to be a captain? How does that go uninterrogated by this pro-democracy movie?
It's wild. It is. And that can skate by real quick, like you said. Like,
it didn't skate by me.
Yeah?
Oh, no, I saw it. And it's the old joke that George Carlin used to say when he would get on a flight and the captain would make an announcement and he'd go, "Who the fuck made this guy a captain?" Where are your credentials, sir? And not disparaging.
And the answer is, like, Cromwell and his two sons are the only three guys in the whole village that can read. So that's why they get the positions, because they can read and write the letters to the other commanders. Yeah, that's why they're in charge.
And don't let them fool you. Nepotism reigns everywhere in every time frame. It's going to be there amongst the best and worst, depending on your point of view of people. And so it didn't surprise me.
It's so odd, because it's like, I feel like if this movie, it sits at the cusp. It's this weird, I think it fails because it's stuck between two eras of cinema, right? Like, it's stuck. It's, on the one hand, it's trying to be an old school Hollywood hagiography, right?
Yeah.
Historical hagiography. But on the other hand, it's towing the line toward like 70s gritty, re-examining, looking at the dark side of so-and-so, and it's inching toward that, but it doesn't know how to get there. And
This
so at
movie-
times it kind of actually, I think it intentionally hints toward Cromwell being the fanatic that he was, where he's like, we will not have peace in Ireland until the Catholic Church is crushed. Right.
Yeah.
And which is 100% how that man felt. So that man was at in a war against the Antichrist, the Pope. Okay.
Yeah.
Which I have thoughts on this in a moment, but
this movie is trying to be Excalibur, but yet wrap itself still in historical fact, but it has to ignore all that to be Excalibur. It's maddening.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, no. So the reason that Cromwell is not shown going and doing the Cromwellian conquest of Ireland, which ended up completely decimating a nation, and a wound from which it's never recovered. So the reason they didn't show this is because this was the kind of height of the troubles in Ireland.
Yeah.
And like, I think the way that the producers would have said it to themselves was like, we don't want to pour gasoline on the fire, right? We don't want to inflame tensions. But what's really true, what do you really mean by that? Why don't you want to inflame tensions? You don't want people to be angry about the thing that they should legitimately be angry about. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't want them
exactly.
you want to hide from them a thing that they should legitimately be angry about and that would get them legitimately pissed at you at this particular moment.
And it feels like we haven't quite learned that lesson in media to this day.
No, and it's an Achilles heel for films. You're either going to tell a story or you're going to tell the story. You can't do both.
I don't know. I think the Barbie movie came really close to doing it all, like being,
actually,
I mean,
not a bad
I haven't seen it.
That is, yeah, Bill, worth it.
Oh,
because
one of the greatest.
Well, I'm just saying, like, we could side tangent just for a moment. Like,
sure,
not only is it everything you think it's going to be, but it's more, because it also gives you the other side of what you think.
It's a movie about the movie that it is, and it's a movie about the movie that's about the movie that it is. Like, but anyway, but yeah, I think that's where it failed. Like, it didn't know how to negotiate this weird moment, and it utterly falls on its face. And Richard Harris is Irish.
Yep.
Richard Harris is fucking Irish.
Yep.
And what did you think of his performance?
Bill, go ahead.
I'm familiar with Richard Harris. I hadn't seen a lot of his younger stuff. His performance it feels oddly restrained throughout the entire movie. He's going for super levels of earnest and passion and conviction, and he screamed on a mountain in Spain to break his voice so he would be raspy and nearly destroyed his recording career.
He was yelling in pubs.
He was drunk. You can't believe any of that shit he tells you, but I don't know. I gotta say, it didn't grab me. It didn't pull me in. It felt
I agree. I had the same sense.
Similar.
But again, as I've watched it, and as I've read the history, it's so true to what we probably know about the guy. Like, this was a big, doughy, dopey, bony guy who had this totally inflated sense of himself, and was prone to stentorian speechifying that wasn't that insightful. That's actually who he was. And I can't figure out if the movie is so smart that it nailed that, or if it like stumbled bass backwards into the accurate characterization.
And because one of the things I like about this movie is the message that comes out of all the facts and figures, the story part. There is the overlying message of do right by the people. That's, if you wanted to have just one distilled bumper sticker thing that stuck in my head, that would be one of those things. And through Harris's performance and Cromwell's voice and actions, from his point of view, if you cut out all the inaccuracies and the religious conflicts and the sheer boring repetition of it all, at the very base, he keeps that message clear and strong through what he does on screen and what he says he's trying to do, even if he's not really doing that in real life, or if he did it in real life. But it's there. He carries it through. And for a movie like this, there has to be a through line that somebody can grab onto. Everybody could find a little bit different one. For me, this was it. And that character was compelling enough to get me through this entire movie. I kept being on the cusp of I kept being on the cusp of waiting for him to either break one way and fall apart, or break another way and become just as bad as the boss Hoggy in Parliament that he's dealing with, or become Superman. I wasn't sure, but the message was there, and so I did appreciate that. And when you deal with historical pieces like this, you play the hand you're dealt. So you've got to. I would rather a piece like this be true, and if Cromwell was that way, that's
Exactly,
what I
yeah.
would want to see. I
Well,
don't want
again,
him to be
I
Superman.
think that the movie actually, the more I watch it, the more I realize the movie does hint at the fact that he's a little bit nuts, you know, that he does seem to fly off the handle and get irrationally crazy about things, because who he ended up becoming in historical fact is basically like the Ayatollah of England, you know. And you know, this is the guy that famously banned theaters and Christmas.
And he had such a performance in how he said everything.
But when the very moment when he goes to the first battle and it's portrayed as he's screaming, "Why are you in retreat? We're here to fight. We came here to fight. We're fighting a war." He gets rid of all the politicizing at certain points, even though it's very political what he's trying to do. And he just cuts to this: we're going to do a thing. We need to do a thing. And that will resonate with the common viewer of a thing, because if you don't know the facts or the story, or maybe you're not even interested, or you just run into it, that will ring true in your head and go, I get it. He sees a thing that to him needs to be done, and he's going to do it, and fuck all anybody that gets in his way.
You definitely believe his like battlefield ethos, right? You feel, you hear that you're like this. Oh, I would follow this guy. If you know, in a battle where everyone is screaming and yelling, like I would do whatever that guy said to do.
Yeah,
you know,
even if the battle,
the battle scenes. Should we talk about the battle scenes?
Yeah, tally ho, let's do it.
Oh, we haven't even talked about fucking Timothy Dalton is in this movie. Young,
one of my likes.
Hot Timothy Dalton yells "tally ho" with a little dog in his arm as he charges into battle with a shiny suit. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah,
Prince
Bill,
Baron has a poodle.
Bring it on. I want to hear this, Bill.
Such an accurate characterization of Prince Rupert had he had a fucking German accent. This guy was so incredibly German. He should have been the most German. He should have been German von Germanstein.
Exactly. If Lily von Stupp had rode onto the battlefield as his wife, I would have bought it at any moment.
But Rupert actually did ride into battle with a little dog named Boy. That's all that shit is all real.
You think you're hot with your purse dog, ladies? Check out this dude. He went to war with it.
So that's all fucking awesome. Again, but yes, these battle scenes shot on the wide open fields of northern Spain because they needed an army, and the cheapest place to get an army was Francoist Spain. So these are all fucking these are all fucking Spanish soldiers under Franco. You know, half of them are probably conscripts, and they're being paid to act as roundhead infantry and such.
We're gonna talk about the battle because I think that'll be a good way to cap off the things we liked about this film. Because I mean, Tally Ho is, I think, on all of our lists, and the dog Boy. But Bill, anything that you liked leading up to battle?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Dalton was one of them because he's just amazing. But just seeing the whole scene played out for what set the tone, because I didn't know anything about this movie, I hadn't seen it, and I hadn't studied this part of history. But then when they start talking about the enclosures, how they're enclosing the land, which get a
also
land
wasn't
grab.
Really, they're taking up a thing from a different area of English history and importing it into here.
Right.
Basically, to make it sound like the parliamentarians have a more righteous cause than they really had. This wasn't really about the enclosing common land.
No, but
taking away rights of passage from the common people. Not really what this was about.
No, but I'm equating the whole thing to the Lex Luthor land grab from Superman the movie, and I'm like, so they're building Otisburg, but,
exactly.
But they're building these fucking enclosures with balsa wood fences that look like they got them from Dollar Tree.
Fences.
They're only 2 feet tall.
Oh my god, these are the flimsiest fences. Like Like a cow is gonna nudge this and it's going to all collapse.
They're not even a child grade level of fencing. This won't keep your kid off the stairs. And they're just sticking these damn things in the ground. And the villagers like, you can't take our lands. You can't take them. And they're like, we can. It's the Lord. We're going to do it. And the dude just walks up with his broom and hits one, and the whole damn thing falls down. It's like, okay, are we gonna go naked gun on this movie?
These are the people that brought us like hedges, like proper fucking hedges, you know?
Hedges that'll cut a bitch. You know?
Jesus.
This ain't it.
20 foot high if it was an inch.
Yeah.
And it set the tone for this movie for a lot of it, because it's so much talking. That's like so many things happen in this movie just because people say them. We're going to enclose the land. You can't enclose the land. Crack. Oh, we can't enclose the land. We'll leave. We'll come back. We'll figure something else out. Oh, we're an army. We don't have an army. We'll go get one. And it's just, what the fuck?
When I first saw it, I assumed it must have been a stage adaptation.
Oh,
and I was like, this started off as a screenplay?
Maybe that's where the fence came from, because that's some community theater fence. How is
it that on the one hand the props department came up with that fucking fence, but on the other hand they built a life-size set of the entire city of Westminster?
Oh my God.
The entire exterior of the entire city of Westminster built at scale.
Yeah.
In a soundstage.
They rebuilt Parliament.
What the fuck was that?
So impressive. And it is like kind of this like checks and balances that you're talking about before, Adam, where like you have so much going for this film. So it is so weird when you get these moments like the fence that it's just like, this is what we're doing here. How many people agreed or signed off on this?
It's just a movie that's just not in control of itself. No,
and that amusing thing for me also parlays into a dislike that I have, because we talked about it earlier with the sound stages. You've got these magnificent outdoor scenes taking place, but like you said, Adam, they go total TOS with their psych and their garden center sets.
On a couple of them,
when Cromwell's son is brought back from the battlefield, and it's like, you guys are filming in 3 feet of space. And the scene where they're hanging one of his soldiers out there for treason.
You don't think that maybe they did that kind of intentionally to make it look a little Renaissance painting in that moment?
If they did, I don't think it was done well. Because it's not communicated.
If you had to wonder, then they didn't sell it.
There has to be a reason, and it can't be because they needed to do it as a pickup, because clearly that's not how this works. So I don't know. It's mind-boggling, because you have so much that you can do. And every time I see
had a lot of studio interference and like an hour cut out of the film.
Yeah.
And there's this one edit. There's a cut where they go from, I don't know, like a battle sequence to angry Parliament, right? And like the cut is so brutal that it's like the studio executive snuck in the night with a pair of scissors and like snipped it, and that's how like abrupt this cut. There's like an audio pop on it. It's so bad.
It's like I'm watching Poltergeist, and it's that kitchen scene where there is like a legitimate rip in the film that no one repaired. Right. Exactly. Bill, I'm totally on board with that. I think that scene is so awkward. Also, when it could be a Renaissance painting, it looks like it's from the movie Eaten Alive by Tobe Hooper, but on a different level of dislike. And I'd love any sort of history to this that maybe I've already learned in this episode, but is it just me? And I know that the Pope is a big old problem for Cromwell, but the evil Catholic Queen is such
Henrietta Maria of France. Yes.
Yeah. So evil, like in this movie.
I know. And it really looks fake. It seems like that's the kind of thing like a fucking male screenwriter would come up with to turn Charles's wife into Lady Macbeth.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
As near as I can tell, that's pretty true to like historical memory. Now, consider who was writing the history. Would be a bunch of fucking Protestant dudes who totally want to make her the bitch, right? That's totally true. However, if anything, it underplayed how actually substantive her interventions were. That she, Charles was a man of, in his own way, really great kind of moral strength and clarity and kind of radiated a certain decency that everyone who knew him kind of commented on. And especially toward the end, his finest hour was his trial, where he simply refused to acknowledge the legitimacy of the court. And it ended up resulting in his death, but it made him kind of a martyr because he took it so well.
Mm-hmm.
But he also was a shrimp. He was physically small. He was kind of mentally small.
Mm-hmm.
He was weak-willed. He had everyone, he lacked gravitas, right?
Yeah.
Which, and Henrietta Maria apparently really just had him wrapped around her finger, and was totally calling the shots, like troop movements and shit during these wars.
Wow.
So I don't think that's really false. I think that's kind of what it was. And I think if anything, the movie
could have made her
maybe it
a
would have been
major
different
player
back then. I think maybe people back then had more context for the Catholic Protestant conflict, right?
Yeah, I could
because
see
now
that.
to hate Catholics just seems just like a dumb, brainless bigotry akin to racism or something like that. I'm not quite sure how much that was the case in this moment in history.
I could
where
believe
you
it.
really had Catholicism as a transnational political power, and people trying to free themselves from that political and economic, to a certain extent, yoke. And that was a really legitimate fight. And the movie, to its credit, in its own shitty school play didactic way, says that. He goes off on that speech where he's like, I am convinced that Catholicism is not just a religion, it's a political power.
Mm-hmm.
But even I think probably viewers today, most of us don't have, at least in the United States, we don't have enough cultural context to know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, why are you so angry at the Catholics? That makes no sense.
I grew up, my family was Catholic, and my neighborhood, that's how religions tend to work, especially in middle America. And everyone went to the same mass and church and everything. And never in my life was anything ever explained to me about why anyone may or may not like one religion over another.
Because you grew up in the era when religion didn't matter anymore.
Exactly.
And that's,
late 80s, early 90s. No one cared, baby. We're swinging around and fighting Desert Storm.
Here's a really important pivot. So I was mentioning how Charles I, like, history records him as being this kind of underwhelming presence, this man without gravitas, right? How a man like Alec Guinness is able to act so well as to inhabit a man without gravitas.
Right.
What fucking magic trick is that? What did you guys think of this performance?
Mystified in so many ways for that same reason, because you could tell as the movie goes along, it's like, I think this king is somewhat of a milksop. He's very amicable to whoever's in the room with him. He's trying to play all the angles, and he's trying to do what he wants without pissing anybody off. So he's doing all these things, and clearly his wife is a factor in everything. But Guinness takes it and almost goes and embraces it and makes it a force within itself through his performance of, my power is to get along, so I'm going to find my way. I'm going to get along my ass out of this bitch one way or the other.
Yeah.
And you follow him along, even though he's clearly just, he's a weasel.
Right.
He's portrayed as a weasel.
Fucking, like, Cromwell is not it. The movie tries to portray Cromwell with some degree of moral complexity, and it fails. Mm-hmm. I think the movie succeeds at portraying Charles with moral complexity, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I hate this guy.
That is clear. That is clear. Cromwell is okay, but King Charles, you're kind of like, well, why do you guys have such a problem with him?
Yeah.
He at least is doing his best.
The one thing
he plays with his kids, and it's that scene where he says goodbye to his kids before he goes and gets beheaded.
It's amazing.
What a scene! And those child actors did great.
But when he
says to that little teeny boy on his lap, and he says, "You must not let them make you king before your brother." And he says, "They'll tear me to pieces first." That kid fucking sells it. And Alec Guinness, a father in that moment, would be so proud. So fucking proud that your 5-year-old has taken it like a man like that. And his hug of that child actor in that moment, like, God, what an incredible actor. Like,
Guinness puts it forward for me that Charles I is the king. That's his bottom line. When he's on screen and he's saying, I'm the king, I don't recognize your authority. I'm the king, I will make these decisions. He knows he's being influenced. He knows he's trying to play the room. But he knows also he is the king. He
If
is
you
on the throne.
fundamentally believe in the divine right of kings, that God selected the House of Stuart to rule over this realm,
Boom.
what else can you do?
Right.
No other power is legitimate. It doesn't matter if you have a good argument.
Yeah.
That's not how any of this works. I've allowed you to have a parliament. You can debate. You can weigh in on great matters of state. But ultimately, I'm in charge, and that's how this all works. And it's like if you believe that, if you believe in that, then that is a case closed argument, right?
Right.
And you see that there's that wonderful moment where Fairfax closes his eyes in shame. As the king says, remember, I am your lawful king, and I'm asking only what I would grant any of you as my subjects. And in shame, Fairfax closes his eyes. And it really does such a good job of just displaying how torn a lot of these men really were. What a wrenching experience it all was. And I just, there's all kinds of little touches like that through the film that I notice as I rewatch it, and it makes me like it more and more. And I get madder and madder at fucking IMDb pricks who half of the goofs in this, in that IMDb section are like, oh, the Earl of Exeter wouldn't have sat in the House of Commons. He would have sat in the House of Lords. Well, if you thought about it, this is the worst kind of pet entry. It's when you have a brain and you could use it to figure out what the film is doing, but instead of thinking about it, you think of the sick burn that you're going to leave on IMDb goofs. Whereas if you thought about it for 5 fucking seconds, you would notice that for economy of storytelling purposes, they put the Commons and the Lords in the same room. The Lords are on the left side, the Commons are on the right side. The factualism, the aristocracy versus the new urban bourgeoisie middle class, that dynamic is perfectly preserved. We just see it in one room instead of 2 because it's a fucking movie. Shut the fuck up, Kevin.
And they built all those sets. They couldn't. They maxed their budget.
I know they're gonna have a whole other hall.
Yeah. Come on.
The Hall of Lords. I don't know what it's called. I don't know where the Lords meet.
And that's the one that has his Cromwell action figures on pristine cards and hasn't opened them. So, but you're right. It's one thing everybody's got to get used to, especially if you're watching a movie. It's taken its pieces and parts, and it's never going to be 100% of a historical moment. If it's based in fact, it's got to cut things down. It's got to be so long. You can't do it all. So you're either going to split your movie into multiple parts, in which case you go to PBS and you make a Cromwell miniseries that's 12 hours, or you do your movie and come away from it and feel good or bad about it. And that's just how movies work.
Bill, I think you make an excellent point, and I know we all have a few more points we need to make, but should we wrap them up in a rating version and final thoughts of this film, gentlemen? Are we ready to do this?
I believe we are, Rob. I think we can put our patented ending on this thing, and it'll let us tie up all these loose ends. Not as many loose ends as the movie has, but certainly the ones that we've brought up here tonight. So
there are frayed edges everywhere.
That's true.
Bill, why don't you let Adam and any new listeners know how we like to rate our film?
So what we do is we came up with a system called 5 nights for $1. If you remember the days of video stores, you might walk in looking for your movie, and either towards the front, the back, somewhere in the store, there's a rack, there's a bookshelf of something, and there'll be a movies, and the sign might say 5 nights for $1. Pick your movie, throw down your $1, keep it 1 night, keep it 5 nights, up to you. So what's how we do it? We use this rating on just the movie. It's not related to anything else. Nothing else we've seen, no comparisons, no sequels, no nothing. Just you've come in, Adam Ragusea, you've walked in to your local video store, whichever one that was. What was your local video store, Adam?
Mike's Movies and Music in State College, Pennsylvania.
Outstanding.
On North Atherton Street.
North Campus Video, Columbus, Ohio. What about you, Robs?
We had Movies at Home in Lee's Summit, Missouri.
In the spirit of all these great temples of cinema.
Don't think about the name of that town for too long.
No, that's right.
In honor of these great temples of cinema, you throw your buck down, you've got your movie, you've walked out. How many of those 5 nights are you going to keep Cromwell based on what you've seen? And I think I'd like to go first on this one, Rob.
Go for it, Bill.
This is an amazing thing. I love these big historical movies. I said earlier, I love Patton is one of my favorite movies of all time. And of course, when you watch these, there's similar vibes. They're big epics. We've talked about all the things we like and things we don't exactly like. But what I found myself feeling after watching this movie for the first time was this movie is a historical Trojan horse. The horse is the movie and its glitz and its production and all the things we've talked about that we like. But I want to know what's inside that horse because I watched this whole thing and I know from watching movies, there's got to be more to this story. It was an amazing experience to see what was going on the screen, especially with Alec Guinness's performance, even Richard Harris's performance. It's not emotional, but on the same question, I'm like, in a way, maybe that is Cromwell. It made me think, is this who these people really are? And hearing that little myth of historical inaccuracy, I wanted to go down the rabbit hole, and I did. I read a bunch. I followed a
Yeah,
bunch
I
about
bet.
this back.
How could
So
you not?
you have to. So while this movie, just as a movie that you're watching on the couch one night, yeah, it's long, and yeah, it's a lot of talking, and there's not a lot of war in this war movie for some odd
There's only
reason.
2
But
battles.
only two, and and that really is a detriment for timeline for me. It feels like this movie takes place in 6 weeks, and it takes place in what 10 years. So that's weird, but
Well, when the
that's
Francoist conscripts are done with their day, they're just kind of done with their day, Bill.
yeah. When the general says you go home, you go home,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I did. So it led me in a new path. So for that, I'm thankful for it. Would I watch it for 5 nights? No, I would probably keep this movie about 2.5 nights as a movie, but for what it was able to do, this is one of those rare movies where we get to say whatever we want about our system, and it left an impact. So it's going to lead me to look into more things, and it did. So in my heart, I'm going to keep this movie probably forever.
Oh, wow.
For the
Wow.
for
I've
what it's
inflicted
done.
it upon someone else. My God.
You have. It's in that genre of thing that I want a movie of this type, of this caliber, of this context of a story to do. Keep learning more. It's the same reason, Adam, you said we watch war movies, World War II movies, things we know. Every time you think you know it all, you don't. You know more. And this is a thing that should encourage people. If you watch it, think about it. Think about what you've seen. And who gives a shit about whose house was sitting on what side of what in the movie? Go read about this thing. Go find
Yeah.
out because this is the kind of stuff that made our world. And all of these people together, all this money, all this passion, it accomplished that. It won't fire you up like Star Wars. It won't make you rah rah like Patton, but it's important. It's an important movie. So I will take it back after a couple of days of, and I've got to go back and watch that drummer on the battlefield fall down at least 4 more times. That poor bastard.
That's so terrifying. I have assumed that was an accident that was caught on film. That looks like a guy who actually stumbled and like fell over his drum
Yeah, I think so.
and got trampled by
which-
some other guys, it looked like.
Which makes me want to go into the history of musicians on the battlefield.
I know.
Jesus, I was in the marching band. We never got shot at.
So fucking harrowing. Did you also, by the way, I think it's in the Edge Hill battle. There's a shot where the camera is under a horse.
Yeah.
The camera is under a charging horse. And I'm like, how in the fuck did you do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Everybody had to be drunk.
Have you seen those cameras?
Yeah.
Those were big fucking cameras.
Yeah, those
when
are
that
Right,
dude
the
got hit in
Technicolor
the head
camera
with
is
that
gigantic.
steak, when he got hit in the head with that steak, that looked real too.
Yeah, there's some shit happening on this screen that is in no way planned in this battle because you can't tell 400 extras exactly where to stand and sit. You're just going to go, have at it, boys. And hopefully if you're here at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you'll get a check. So 2.5 nights for me, but a lifetime impact. And it's a movie that I will return to here and there
Wow.
for sure. So that's
Generous
my
score,
rating.
generous score.
Yeah. What's who's next, Bill?
Oh, you.
Oh, okay.
Definitely
sir.
you, Robs.
Well, it makes me remember that history class was one of my favorite classes, yet I've retained very little from my middle America upbringing. So when I have the opportunity to watch a historical drama, a biopic, whatever you want to call it, I'm on that same page. The movie can be so-so, it can be great, it can be The Patriot, you never know. But like if it actually makes me want to go research more about what's going on, that's a win that a lot of movies don't get me to do, right? And so I didn't have, in time of watching this and in time of research, I didn't have a whole bunch to like figure out the Three Kingdoms War. But in discussing it and hearing so much from you, Adam, that has an effect on me more so than the movie, but it wouldn't have happened without the movie, you know, like it, and that's important.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think
if a movie makes you curious about something, you go,
Exactly.
you learn about it, you have a fun talk about it, and then you go back and you watch it again and you understand it a little bit more.
Yep.
Well, that movie's done a good job.
Exactly. And sure, there were things that were less than perfect in this film. And I also like that because that is funny and that is enjoyable. So, Bill, you came in at a 2.5. I think if I were to rent this for $1 at Movies at Home, I would keep it for 3 nights because I would want to watch it twice and I would need 3 nights to actually do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why your rating system is so ingenious for this show, because a 5 is not necessarily a compliment.
Not
right?
always.
No,
Sometimes
not
it
always.
takes 5 nights to get through the fucker, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's
where
why
landing.
I think that's why like I would definitely get this is an easy 5 for me,
Uh-huh.
because I think what I would do is I would watch it the first night and kind of, end up like playing Candy Crush or something for a while for like, and then, forgetting about it. But then the next day kind of thinking about it and like, I'm supposed to be at work, but I'm like on the Wikipedia looking at the, English Civil War history and thinking about it. And then I go back and I watch it, and then I watch it some more and then some more. And like, I've been doing that now for like 6 years.
Wow.
Like this has been the movie I just habitually watch for like 6 years to go to sleep or like all kinds of things. And I think that my fascination with it is in I think it's a better movie than people give it credit for. I think it does stand up to repeated viewing. And I think when you understand the history and you understand how challenging it is to try to portray such unbelievably complex and extremely well documented events, that's one of the things about like, this is like, you want to, this is a war between lawyers, at the dawn of the printing press. Okay. All of these motherfuckers wrote books. Okay. Every single fucking black-hatted motherfucker in there wrote memoirs.
Yep.
Right. So when the king comes in and tries to arrest the 5 members, which is, one of the incredibly important moments in English history. Cromwell was not one of the 5 members at that point, by the way. He was not important enough to be arrested at that point in the story. But that really did happen. And like, the king saying, "Oh, I see the birds have flown. Where are these men?" And the speaker saying, "I have neither ears to see nor tongue to speak, nor such as this house gives me leave." All of these is verbatim from the record of what happened in there, because 200 fucking lawyers witnessed every minute of it and wrote it all down, So like it's not just that these events are complicated, but in fact, we know so much. And once you come to appreciate that, you can see kind of the artistry with which a lot of things were condensed. And then of course there are, I think Alec Guinness's performance here is just one of the greatest historical performances I've ever seen, maybe the greatest. Like, and again, you learn the slight Scottish accent because he, although he was not born in Scotland, his father was originally a Scottish king who got imported into England. All his speech impediment, all of that, drifting between having no gravitas and actually kind of having a little gravitas, and you're like, oh wait, oh shit, it's such a triumph. But I guess it's not so much that I like it, but that I'm fascinated by it, and I'm fascinated by it as a snapshot of how a certain segment of the English people thought of themselves in the late 1960s, and how they wanted to imagine their history at that point. And that goes all the way from kind of trivial things to like, this is not my area of expertise, but as I've read, critiques where it's like a lot of the clothing, as richly textured as these costumes are, it's more kind of 19th century romantic reimaginings of what Puritans looked like than it is what Puritans actually looked like at the time, and that kind of shit. So it's other from that all the way to making the English Civil War a fight for democracy, right? Which it only kind of a little bit was.
Yeah.
And again, to the movie's credit, though, they do show, they never name the character, but the guy with the most epic mullet of them all, the most epic, who's basically playing a real historical figure named John Lilburn, Freeborn John, who was kind of like the loudest of the levelers, who was calling for complete leveling of society, radical change. And that actor, who I think at the time for them would have been a proxy for a 60s radical, right?
Oh,
with his fucking flowing fucking floppy hair,
Right. And all the LSD he did in this film too. So.
Yeah.
My Birkenstock's authentic.
So like John Lilburn was fighting for democracy or communism. I guess there's a difference there. But power to the people, right? And
of course.
To each according to his needs, right?
Yeah.
That kind of shit is what he was advocating. But like Cromwell was not advocating for that, not one bit, That's not what most of the people in this fight were fighting for. But nonetheless, whether they intended it to be or not, the effect of what happened was this gigantic tectonic shift in the direction of modern liberal democracy. And because this story is part of that story that was tremendously important to us in the middle of the 20th century, when we were trying to consolidate the gains of liberal democracy against what proved to be ultimately a very dark alternative. And I say that as someone who's like a very standard, garden variety American, academic lefty who has enormous emotional sympathy toward hard leftism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who really, when they start talking about how to each according to his needs, from each according to his gifts, I kind of think right on, comrade, right? On an emotional level. But on an intellectual level, I know that it did not go well, and it kind of cannot go well. Like org theory basically now leads us to understand that it inevitably leads toward autocratic dictatorship, as they're finding in China right now with Chairman Xi, right? So it's, anyway, so like that's why they were telling the story at this time, to kind of, it was supposed to be a birth of democracy story. But the problem is that that's not really what the story is. Mm-hmm. And you can't make it that.
Yeah.
It just isn't that. History is more messy and fucked up than that. And Hollywood was / whatever the fucking British equivalent, they would have been like 2 years later, they would have been ready to tell the real story. It would have been like, so they would have gotten some fucking 70s auteur with a Super 8 camera to like tell the real story of Cromwell. And it probably would have been fucking badass. It would have been great. Martin Scorsese's Cromwell.
Oh, God.
Give me Coppola's Cromwell. Holy shit.
John Cassavetes Cromwell.
Hell yes.
So did
John Hughes's Cromwell?
Yes.
So you're landing on Five Nights for all of these reasons.
Perfectly great.
That's great.
So that's why I would keep it. Like it's the movie that like I would keep and forfeit my deposit for.
Oh hell yeah!
Mostly A, because I wouldn't want to give it up, and B, because I would be embarrassed to be. They'd be like, this is what you kept for 6 months.
Yes, it is.
Really?
I'm paying $86.
This is what you've been jacking it to this whole time? Like,
well,
those hairdos, you gotta.
That's the other battle that was fought off camera.
Well,
Adam, this is a movie that fails the Bechdel test, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Only slightly. Only slightly. That being said, we really appreciate you, Adam Ragusea, coming on the show.
I thought there was like a Drunk Shimoda-like segment.
Well, let's bring it on. Let's do it. Tell me, what is your amusing moment of today's
Do you guys have amusing moments?
Oh, yeah. We've just been caught up in the glitz and glam of the episode.
So I forget which battle it's in. I think it's the second one. So it would have been the Battle of Naseby. That's the one where the parliamentarians win, right? Which, by the way, the parliamentarians were not outnumbered.
Nope.
It was the other way around. Yeah.
Yep.
But which is, again, it's like a weird choice because it's like Cromwell fought battles where he was horrendously outnumbered, where he should not have won. And he charged with the fervor of a man who believes God is behind him, and he fucking won. Show us that battle. That's a great battle to show.
Yeah, you pick the battle where he's the back puncher at the bar. He already knows the guy's down.
Jesus. Anyways, so it's the Battle of Naseby, and it's where they're like hiding behind. There's like a low wall, like a low stone wall, and they're hiding behind the wall, right? So go back and watch that scene. There's a hat. There's an infantryman's hat on the ground, clearly from the previous take.
Yeah.
And I just love that Francoist conscript was like, should I tell somebody that I forgot my hat? Nah.
They tell us to not make trouble.
Yeah, no trouble.
Bill, did you have an amusing moment you'd like to share?
Oh, I sure did. The initial dinner scene, the grand entrance of everybody as they all come into the king's court to have dinner, the giant
what
table.
A set piece that is.
It is amazing.
All the extras, the dogs, and like, Jesus.
It's everywhere. It's opulent beyond words. It's everything they're trying to portray. And of course, as the king comes into dinner and he goes to sit down, they all bow in respect. They do their curtsies. And I noticed somehow, I want to believe he did it on his own. The fucking dog bows.
I know. This gigantic dog elegantly with its willowy limbs.
Yeah.
Like bows.
He does. And it is a bow. This dog is not just, he's going to lay down, because he gets back up and then goes to his spot and then lays down. This dog bows. And I'm like,
give
that
dog the fucking Oscar.
That is the monarchy, motherfucker. You have made it to the top when your dogs in the room bow to the king. That's hail to the king levels of awesomeness. It's right up there with Bruce Campbell.
My dog's just farting in my face.
Oh, the cat would never do that.
No. Well, guys, my amusing moment is something I've already mentioned, and I think it's a real feather in the cap of this film. Tally ho. I couldn't get enough of it. I rewound it.
Timothy Dalton as Prince Rupert, as he charges into battle on his horse with his dog boy in his arm, with his like long rapier with the like basket hilt around it. He swirls it in the air and he says, "The sport begins! Tally ho!" And it's the thing is just like, I think maybe when I first saw that, I was like, get the fuck out of here with this shit. And then like I read about like Prince Rupert and like, he's the archetypal the cavalier, he's that guy, that stereotype that we have, where you think, oh, you're just trapped. That's just like a fucking movie trope. That's like an old movie trope from like an Errol Flynn movie. This is where the trope came from. It's this guy. That's Prince Rupert. That character is Prince Rupert. It's this guy.
Yeah.
And that's 1970 Timothy Dalton. He is, I love Timothy Dalton. I love him on camera. I've Flash Gordon, James Bond. It's everything he does. He's just got a certain way about him that he knows how to play. And
that scene where he's wounded and he comes back before the king in shame and he turns on the real acting switch.
It is the most emotional, gut-wrenching scene in this movie for me, because he lays it all out. It is I honestly believe that he's been cut open the way he plays this thing.
Yes, he looks hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt physically, he's hurt emotionally, and when he is exiled, the look in his eye is just this dead horror that I don't know where he reached down to get that, but it is phenomenal.
It's a shame that he and Alec Guinness didn't get along.
Yeah, I read that.
They might have, maybe, I don't know. I'm sure Dalton was a total prick to deal with in those days. I'm sure they were all prima donnas.
Yeah, I'm sure that
but I also wonder if maybe
maybe
Alec didn't feel that, this
I don't
is a
know.
younger one of me.
Maybe Alec was on his way to the commissary. Dalton's out there and he just looks at this empty tree stump and he sticks his arm in it and he looks at Guinness. He pulls it back out. Come on, tree man. We going to play? Guinness is like, I'm not doing that.
Have you guys done Flash Gordon yet? Because I'll do Flash Gordon with you like right now if you want.
Why don't we schedule Flash Gordon?
Okay,
Because
I will do that.
I know
all
that's
night.
on Bill's list.
A little bit, yeah.
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 Okay, so be on the lookout, listeners, for our next episode with the Goose, where we're covering the Flash Gordon. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Thank you guys so much for fucking
yeah.
indulging me and watching this stupid fucking movie with me. Because like I've been thinking of all of these things to say for the last 6 years, and I've had no one to say them to. So thank you for letting me.
You're welcome.
I had
anytime.
the bluest of balls for this conversation, and I just blew all over you guys.
Well,
and thank
I
you
hope
for
you're
taking
feeling
it.
some relief, and you get a little bit of R&R after this one. Adam, why don't you, if there's anyone out there who has no idea, tell them where they can find more of your content.
They shouldn't. I don't want any new fans.
Okay, no new fans, and don't even Google him, everyone.
No,
okay,
no, I'm fine, thanks.
All right.
All right, but if you don't want to make good lasagna for your mother-in-law and your new wife at the time, then, don't go look up the Goose's recipe. Fine.
Yeah.
You can play it that way.
We can play it that way. I still make cast
Honestly,
iron
okay,
pizza.
here's the thing. If people don't know, yes, I make goofy cooking videos on the internet. I have a podcast now.
Yes.
That like is much tinier in audience, because what it is it's like it's what it's evolved into is like a 90-minute scripted monologue with a whole bunch of like narrative complexity and like self-referential like internal arcs and shit, and like it's a highly crafted thing that I totally understand why most of the children who watch me on the internet don't care. But if you're a smart person with a long attention span, as demonstrated by the fact that you're here, so I would absolutely love to have you subscribe to my podcast, the Adam Ragusea podcast. And I know I can't really tell you what it's about. Like I usually talk about food, but sometimes not. I don't know. What it is like if you like me, it's me spinning a yarn about something to the best of my ability each week, and I just trust. I hope if you like my shtick, I think you'll like that, because it's I do me well there. Whether me is good, that's up to you.
I think that's a great way of putting it, and I do think our listeners will enjoy it. So check it out.
It is a very good show, because it was good enough for me to leave a rare comment on the YouTube channel. And that's not just because I know Adam. The show was so good that it inspired me to leave a little note of good job, Adam, because
did you get good. Like an auto reply from like a fake account of me where I said that like you should message me on Telegram and I'll give you a tchotchke?
Oh, good Lord, no, because I knew you're not going to read that. That was for my own self-gratification. So I did it in spirit, just the way we like it.
It is just the way we like it. And I like to say thank you to a few people. I got to say thanks to Rob Adler for helping us edit these episodes. And thank you to Draxium and Dr. Z for our theme music. I'd like everyone to tell your friends. This one's outside the paywall, everyone. So if you'd like to get more content, help support this podcast, go to billandrobs.com or patreon.com/billandrobs. And I promise you will love it. That is a guarantee from me. And I've had to sign contracts, people. I can only speak in honest terms.
Yeah. And Goose, you will always have a home here to talk about any weird movie that you can come up with.
Thank you. I have others. I don't know. I have a very unquiet brain.
I know that feeling.
It's awful.
Well, we will see everyone next time on Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure.